Welcome back to another edition of Hanging Einstein. I'm Andy Singleton, People's Pen on Twitter. Thanks again to Draft Breakdown for letting me do this special on their site, which is tremendous and growing at a rapid pace. And I'm joined today by another Draft Breakdown member, and that is Mr. Jeff Risdon. Jeff?
Hey.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me, Andy. It's good to see Hanging Einstein right behind you.
Yes, he was literally hanging, which is in part why the name of the show was hatched. Dragged us back from Venice Beach, California to Brooklyn, and it stayed on the floor for a good 6 months. And I got nagged every day. When are you going to hang Einstein? When are you going to hang Einstein? And thus the title of the show was born. And it's also kind of play on words because, you are a respected kind of genius in your field, if you will. So it's kind of putting you on trial, and all my guests for that matter, putting them on trial and kind of getting to know them better, and basically that was it. So how are you today?
Oh, awesome! I have to put this on the record first. I owe you like 2 drinks from Mobile because we were supposed to hook up the last night I was there, and an hour of editing is good. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Apologize about that. Hopefully it wouldn't happen again. I need to get a new laptop at some point. This one keeps freezing on its cache, and it screws me all the time.
No worries at all. That will let's put that out there. Maybe we get you a Matt Waldman story.
There you go. Yeah, no kidding.
So, all right, I'm going to actually put that right in there. I'm going to edit up to that point and put that right in there. So if you're watching this, you are hearing what my plans are for this. You were saying down in Mobile, we got a chance to meet, and quite an experience. How many Senior Bowls have you been to?
I believe it's 9.
Okay.
I've been going on there a long time. It's a lot of fun. I try to make it every year. I do them in a row. I always go from the Shrine game the week before to the Senior Bowl. It's kind of my time away from time to get transition from the NFL season into draft season, which is I love the draft. That's my most fun part of the year. So
okay,
I'm getting right now.
I just made it to my second, so I got some catching up to do. But I think I will hit the 9 mark at some point, provided I live another 9 years. But I mean, basically, I plan to incorporate it into my my January plans every year. But
it should be a bucket list thing for every football fan. Just even if you're not into like the draft, you see every coach is there, every general manager is there, every draft media, every national media guy is there. It's fun to just people watch.
Right, it really is, and it's really that like up close and personal. I was going to say intense, but that's not the word I was looking for. I mean, just to give an example, on my plane back from Mobile, I had to fly through Chicago, and John Fox is sitting 2 rows up on the left. Behind him was a Charger scout, and he's going through film, and it's just that's you're living the high life at that point. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned you have a passion or love for the NFL draft. Please tell everybody who might not be aware, who isn't here because you're on this, but here because of the show and doesn't know you at this point. So I'm trying to introduce some new fans for you as well, because as I mentioned before, you are a well-respected writer and have a big following. And what is that in?
Yeah, sure. I've been covering the draft for Real GM since 2004 was the first draft I covered. And most people know Real GM, if they know it at all, as a basketball site. And I was initially, on their basketball side, and I've always been interested in football and doing football. That was, what I really wanted to do. And they facilitated it, and I've gotten progressively better at it. I've gotten a lot of help along the way from a lot of good people. My first couple of years of covering it was just like, okay, let's do a mock draft. Let's, these are guys that I've watched a lot on TV, so I think I have a good feel for them. And it's grown from there. And now I write a draft breakdown. I try to do something a little bit different with my writing on this site, which seems to go over pretty well. I have been in a lot of places. I've covered the Detroit Lions for a lot of different things. I was at Bleacher Report for a while. Now I'm at Sideline Report as an editor, and that's my Lions fix, and just a ton of different places over the years. I ran Detroit Lions draft for a long time. football's future, NFL's future. You name the future. Cash and checks, man. That's what it's all about.
Okay. So now you mentioned Detroit, and I think a lot of people that do know you would associate you with the Lions. Are you born and bred Detroit?
Actually, no, I'm not. I'm a native Clevelander. I grew up just outside of Cleveland in a town called Vermilion, Ohio. If you ever look on the map of the Great Lakes, there's a little dip in Lake Erie. I grew up a mile from there. So, okay. Most of my family still lives in that area and are Browns fans. I've been a Lions fan since about 1980. When I got frustrated with how obnoxious my family was with their Brownsdom, I needed to do something different. And our CBS affiliate at the time, we got it out of Toledo instead of Cleveland. It was a clearer signal, and Toledo's really close to Detroit. So it was like, okay, the Lions are always on. Let's follow them. And they got Billy Sims. I was a huge Billy Sims fan coming out of Oklahoma. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I'm like, wow, that guy's awesome. So I did that. And then Chris Spielman is my all-time football hero. I'm an Ohio State guy, and just, the way he played and loved it. He went to Detroit then, and I was sold. I've been a Lions fan ever since. I still do, have feelings for Cleveland and a lot of sources there. Right. But the Lions have had my heart for a long, long time. Awesome.
And you mentioned Ohio State. Did you go there for college, or where did you wind up going?
I went to Ohio U and home of the Bobcats. And,
I was going to say Bobcats, yeah.
Yeah. My dad went to Ohio State, and I went to Ohio State games religiously as a kid. My dad had tickets, being an alumni and everything. And, I remember going to games as early as, I was 3 years old, and I remember actually being there and, doing that and riding down. It was a 2-hour drive from our house, riding with my dad. And it was some of my best memories of being in football with a kid. So now I live in Michigan. I live on the west side of the state. Here, we'll hold up the hand. I'm here.
Okay.
For those of you who know the Michigan mitten thing. And it's weird because crowdsource me a new computer, folks. I need one.
All right.
He's a testament to that.
Yes, and I'm serious with that. So we Kickstarter, crowdsource, we'll start something. But you mentioned the Michigan mitten.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. When you live in Michigan, it's shaped like a mitten. So you put your hand up. Detroit is like here. I live over here by Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is like here. I live in Holland, which is here. Lansing's kind of in the middle. The UP's way up here. You actually do that, and it's up there. So it's a local colloquialism, but it's an easy way to show where you're from. So I actually live closer to Chicago than I do to Detroit, but it's very Detroit centric here. So.
Okay. And I knew Ohio being Bobcats because they had a good basketball run for a little bit where they had a couple guys drafted. It was I want to say a center. I forgot his name now. This was going back a while. And I believe it was a point guard as well.
Yeah. When I was there was when Gary Trent was there, the Shack of the Mac.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Gary Trent, exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah, that was a fun time, man. That was my second junior year. So that was a great time to be there.
Okay, so I got to go to this one now. Second junior year, and I say second junior year because I didn't, go the 4-year route myself. So how did you have a second junior year?
Yeah, I changed my major a few times. I went there initially for broadcast journalism. I wanted to be a TV weatherman, and I got a little sidetracked with that. I wound up being a history major, and I also minored in climatology and geography. So it took a long time. I took a year off because I ran out of money and needed some maturity, needed a little kick in the butt, and did that and got back, and it worked out very well. So plus, if you can spend 6 years in college, do it because it was awesome.
I did, and it wasn't because I changed my major. It was because I changed my drink a few times. But no, so all right. So you went to Ohio, and so you wound up finishing with communications. You said
I actually have a degree in history. So
you switched into history.
Yeah.
Okay, so you finished with history. Okay, so how do you wind up becoming a sports writer?
Well, I've always loved sports. My senior history thesis was on the USFL and why it failed. I did reports with on. I've always liked the alternative league thing, and I was a huge USFL fan when I was a kid.
Okay,
so that was a natural niche for me. So it's just always something that I've loved. You grow up in Northeast Ohio, you grow up in football. That's what it is.
Right.
And football was. We always had to get home from church on Sundays in time to go watch the Browns or the Lions or whatever. And Monday Night Football, my parents would let me stay up till halftime, and I thought that was like the greatest thing ever.
Right.
Watching Danny Don and Frank Gifford. So it's always been just an integral part of my life, even though I'm not a player. I didn't play after 8th grade, so it's, it's just something that I've always, I love it. It's football, man. How can you not love it?
It really is. And, not to sound too emotional, but and I'm going to get into this later. I'm going to ask you if I want to start a new thing with my guests. What's your favorite football movie? But I was watching Friday Night Lights yesterday, a movie I just can't turn off if it's on. I would have to say it's probably my favorite, but, if you put on something else, I might say that was. So I was talking about All the Right Moves with John Ledyard last week. So, but it's just, you watch it, you get caught up in the, the locker room scene at halftime of the state championship game. And I wanted to run through a wall for Preacher, as I'm watching this scene that I've seen 100 times already. But this isn't a political show. You mentioned the USFL. Were there a lot of Trump references?
You know what? I actually got to interview Donald Trump. I was a 22-year-old college guy, and I set up an interview through his people, and it wound up being Donald Trump talking at me for about 10 minutes. I asked probably 3 questions, but he was cordial about it. And they did a 30 for 30 on it, and it was basically my thesis rehashed. And he played up being the villain card a little bit more in that than he did with me. But he made some salient points about it. He talked about the division of ownership, how there were some that wanted, to be absorbed into the NFL, which was his angle. There were some that were just looking to make money, and there were some that were trying to make, a viable, indices. And I know Jeff Pearlman is writing a book about it now. So Jeff, sorry to spoil that for you, buddy.
Oh, well, you broke up just for a second, and I screamed out, "Oh!" So if anybody's hearing that, I apologize. But we were talking about Trump in the USFL, and then you had the XFL with Vince McMahon, so who looks phenomenal at 70, by the way. If anybody's seen a picture of him, you think this guy's going to run next? I mean, we got a bunch of 70-year-olds running for president now. So are we far from Vince McMahon throwing his hat into the ring?
That would be something else, man. Because I'd rather have the Ric Flair. Woo! He could be his campaign pimp guy. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. That would be tremendous. So what were you doing right after college?
I did nothing. No, I did nothing sports related. My first job out of college, I was a desk manager at an Embassy Suites in Cleveland, where I worked in the hotel and hospitality industry throughout college. So that was, what do you do with a history degree? Well, you either teach, you go into the seminary, you go to grad school, or you get a job somewhere else. And I got the job somewhere else. So I did that for a while. I got a good job I was a field rep for a computer company in the automotive industry for a long time.
Okay.
Did that for like 5-6 years. And that got me to see the country. I was on the road, I spent 200 nights a year in a Holiday Inn,
okay.
Traveling around the country and everything. So, and through that, I got burned out, just tired of being away from home. And that moved me around the country too. So, then I gave that up, decided to use my degree, and I got a job as a teacher, teaching 7th grade government and social studies at a inner city middle school in Petersburg, Virginia. I was one of 3 white people in the building, and that was a total culture shock for me. But it was also something that led me into getting back into football, and because one of the guys that I worked with there was a guy who was a punter for Army, but he went to high school with Lawrence Taylor. So he had all these Lawrence Taylor stories, and they were great. And the guy's name is Ward White. He passed away a few years ago, so rest in peace, Ward. But it was one of those deals where he got me back into officiating, which is something that I had done when I was younger.
Okay.
And through that's always been sort of my in. And that's not to get too detached, but one of the reasons why I see things a little bit differently is because when I've been on the field, I'm watching instead of playing. And I think that gives me a little bit of a different perspective.
But you were saying you watch stuff as an official, instead of watching the game, you're actually watching more specifics. So
right.
that benefited you in your writing and your analysis of things.
Yeah, I think it gives me a different angle on things because I've seen what works and what doesn't work, and I see the little tricks. Mm-hmm. So even though I don't have a playing background per se, I know enough from being on the field to say, oh, well, he's using his hands really well, or he's doing the same thing all the time. It makes me very cognizant in watching line play of hand usage, hand placement. Are his hands too wide? Is he following it up? Because when I was primarily an umpire when I did it. And so I'm watching for holding. So if you follow me on Twitter and I'm doing it during a game, I'm screaming all the time that there's holding going on, or illegal shifts, or a lineman wasn't set, because I kind of see it from that defensive line point of view. Even though I'm obviously, you've met me, I'm clearly not built like a defensive lineman.
Well, you could be. I mean, you got probably a foot on me. You are a tall. You could play center for the Ohio Bobcats.
That would have been nice, yeah.
But isn't it true that you can argue there's holding on every play in a football game?
Absolutely. And there's more defensive holding than ever gets called, and there's a whole lot of that. And I see that with some of the prospects this year. One of the guys that I just broke down was Jaron Reed. He gets away with a ton of defensive holding. So you see it from that angle too. So I'm very wise to technique. And what to look for in terms of technique and how they're doing it and how they're accomplishing their productivity and things like that.
Okay.
And I don't think most people have that kind of background. So
just when you get into good points. Let me try to bring us back to where we were. We were talking about officiating, and we were talking about that it can be said that there can be a holding call on every snap in a football game, and then you were mentioning that it's predominantly on the defense, and Jaron Reed in particular in this year's class does a lot of defensive holding that gets unnoticed. So my question to you is going to be: I played basketball in college, and when people talk about the transition from the college game to the pro game, it's going to be tough on a particular player based on his skill set, things like that. I can relate to that. When you're mentioning a guy like Jaron Reed doing a lot of holding in college, my question to you is, does the officiating in the pros differ from college, where this is something that can affect his game?
Oh, yeah. I think you see that in the NFL game. One of the biggest complaints is that, it's geared towards the offense, much more so than in college. And a lot of it is schematic. In college, you scheme to get open, and in the NFL, all the rules generally protect the offense, and they're trying to get more scoring, and that doesn't happen in college. So they're a little bit more accepting of offensive holding, and they'll pick up the defensive holding a little bit more. And some of it's just coaching. In college, it's more about they're trying to win and do everything whatever they can. And I apologize, my cat almost just jumped on me. This is the craziest interview ever, man. I apologize for my lack of professionalism.
And in case you were wondering, the background change and the angle change, Jeff has switched now to the iPad. So
yes, I have. There we go. That's a little bit better.
If you have a computer laying around and you enjoy Jeff's work, I implore you, let's make this happen.
Yeah, I'm in desperate need. My computer is ready to be thrown out the freaking window right at the moment. Yeah.
So that's, dude. We've all gone through it, and I'm telling you, like I told you, I got a whole new setup on Hanging Einstein going now. Camera technical problems with the camera, lighting. So hopefully, the finished product is going to look good from my end as well. But
good. Yeah,
I hope so. So would you say that your specialty would be the line? And do you have a preference for offense or defensive line?
I do like defensive line. I try not to specialize myself. I know a lot of guys like Ledyard talked about, doing wide receivers and things like that, and other guys, especially like Matt Harmon's really good at that.
Right.
I try to do more of a general thing. I'm not a quarterbacks guy. I try to make that pretty clear. That's like my least favorite position to scout.
And you say that, and I'm laughing because I was going to talk quarterbacks with you because I feel like I see you talk a lot of quarterbacks.
Well, it's weird because I'll be humble a little bit. Not really. I'm good at quarterbacks, but I don't. It's one of those deals where it's just annoying because that's what everybody does. So I've always tried to do something a little different. I love defensive line play. I love the interplay between the interior offensive line and the interior defensive line. When I go to a game, that's what I'm watching. That's, I don't watch the ball all that much. But in terms of like what I'm really good at with scouting, most of my misses have been on guys where, like, I don't know, I get too enamored with what they're doing
Right.
in terms of, in the trenches. So a lot of my misses have been defensive line guys. So I'm probably not all that good at it. I don't know. But I enjoyed evaluating everything.
Okay.
And one of my things as an evaluator is I'm really good at being able to say that guy can't play. I'm really good with those guys. I'm almost never wrong. It's the guys that I think, probably can play, and I trump them up too much. That's more of where my errors are.
Okay. Well, this is kind of a fantasy relevant show. I know a lot of guests, like you included, are more just strictly NFL draft guys. I don't know if you play fantasy personally. I will imagine you do, because it's hard to not when you're so associated with football. But my point being is this is set to be a deep defensive class, especially for the line. And my question is there somebody – see, IDP leagues are really taking off, and defensive line is not really something that, there's not really many studs, at the line. I mean, at defensive tackle, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Ends, you get your sack guys and stuff, but the defensive tackles, there are really not too many that jump out at you as studs in a fantasy setting. So is there anybody in this year's class in particular that you would pinpoint, or is nothing really that jumps out at you?
As far as tackles, I don't think there's any. Vernon Butler is a guy. He's probably not going to be there right away, but I think he's a guy that could eventually be a big time sack producer from the inside.
Okay.
But as far as the edges go, I mean that's where you're looking at. Joey Bosa. I think he's going to disappoint a lot of people because he's going to get like 8.5 sacks and maybe 2 forced fumbles. I think where he's going to be drafted, probably in that 5 to 12 range, people are going to expect a little more out of him. But he's a guy. I don't see a lot of great IDP plays. I'm not a big IDP guy. That's just not my thing.
Right.
I do fantasy primarily in my neighborhood here, so my friends and neighbors can say, "Hey, I beat the football guy in fantasy," and that makes them happy. So I'm not all that good at it.
No, and that's fair. So you're just in a local league.
Yeah, and I've done one with my friends. I played volleyball for a long time. That's sort of the sport where I did best, as being 6'5" and 200 pounds. You don't play football, you play volleyball. And basketball too. I still play basketball a lot, but volleyball, there's a lot of people there that are very into fantasy football. So I'm in a couple of different leagues with some volleyball folks. So
okay,
that's fun.
Well, and I wanted to bring this back to the quarterbacks. And you definitely, I mentioned your size earlier with your height, and I could definitely see volleyball being a where you can definitely utilize that. And there's a correlation between volleyball and basketball players that I've found throughout my years. But I mentioned the quarterbacks because you said you were a Cleveland fan until you just became disenamored with the franchise. A lot of people feel like they're still like in turmoil. They had the number 2 pick. They were targeting. They were perceived to be targeting a quarterback, and now you have this blockbuster with the Rams trading, basically giving away, it seems like, everything to trade up to number 1 in what was thought to be a weak class, maybe a deep class, but a weak class with top-end talent, not a surefire, stud quarterback, guys that, we've got our top 3, but even those guys are kind of debatable. So now all of a sudden you've got this like crazy scenario and situation playing out because it seems like the Rams are moving up because they need a quarterback. So now it almost seems that you're going to go 1-2 with quarterbacks when, a couple months ago we might not even had a first-round quarterback to begin with. So is this more reason for you not to ever come back to the Cleveland fan base?
I think they made a good move in getting RG3 first off, and I think RG3, if he's healthy, is better than any quarterback in this draft, and better than any quarterback in this draft ever will be.
Agreed.
Now, yeah, are you ever going to get back to that guy though? The 2012 guy who was the rookie of the year and took Washington to the playoffs from out of nowhere. I don't know if he's ever going to get back to that, but if I'm the Browns, I'm banking on that. You've got 1 year to do it. I would not take a quarterback at number 2. I would get help for him. They need a running back. They need a wide receiver. Josh Gordon and Johnny Manziel, the guys that they thought were going to be their saviors, are partying together and probably getting arrested as we speak. So I want to see them. Ezekiel Elliott, for me, is the best offensive skill position player in this draft, and I would take him at number 2. They're not going to do that. But I would, if I'm the Browns, I'm riding with RG3, and I'm worrying about quarterback next year if I still need one. Right. Because if they still need one, they're going to be right at the top of the draft again. And, it's a little premature to say who's going to be there, but there's some quarterbacks next year that look pretty darn good too. So I wouldn't keep doing that. I would opt out for that. But now, like you said, with the trade, you're looking at a team, they're going to take a quarterback regardless of what I think they're going to do. So you're going to see Jared Goff and Carson Wentz be the first 2 picks of the draft. One of the things that happened, the ripple effects that I think is going to happen, is that Paxton Lynch is definitely going in the top 7. He's not falling past San Francisco. Yes. Just because that QB thirst, man, it's real. As illogical as it seems, they're not. San Francisco, Chip Kelly is not going to battle with Blaine Gabbert as his quarterback. That ain't going to happen. So now, if you're like the 4th team that needs a quarterback, now you're looking and thinking, oh my God, I got to get into the first round here. So I think there's definitely 4 quarterbacks. I think Connor Cook is going to be in the first round.
Do you think he should be in the first round?
I think he should be as well. He's my number 2 quarterback. I have Paxton Lynch as my 1. Then Connor Cook, and then Carson Wentz. I'm not a big Goff guy at all. He's actually my 5th guy. I have Vernon Adams in there. And I know Vernon Adams is not getting drafted. I'm a believer. I was at the Shrine game. I saw the magic. It was something to behold. It really was. For all of us who were there, it was captivating. And I think everybody who was there and saw it thinks so much higher of Vernon Adams than people who don't. Unfortunately, he's 5'11". He's built like Allen Iverson, so he's not going to get drafted, and might not even get a fair shot at ever getting it. And that's very unfortunate because he's won everywhere he's been. And I not to get detached on the quarterback wins, but winning as a quarterback is better than losing as a quarterback. And that's one of my little knocks on Goff.
Yeah, and I get the quarterback position is totally unique and desired. And not to, knock the Shrine game or anything like that, but was Vernon Adams just the best of an adequate bunch? And the reason I asked that is because, the guy that stood out to me was Jay Lee at the Senior Bowl. I thought he looked good. I thought he looked the part. Didn't even get a combine invite, and now he's not even talked about anywhere as being, a prospect for the NFL. Yeah. So my point is, Vernon Adams, you happen to be there, and I understand, when you witness things in person, you get compelled and the magic and all that. And you're not the only guy who's been high on Vernon Adams, but was he just head and shoulders above, not too many guys that he needed to be head and shoulders? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The second best quarterback there was probably Nate Sudfeld, and he's crap. So that matters. So that's why you go back and you watch what he did at Oregon. And when he was healthy at Oregon, he tore up really good defenses in the Pac-12. And did so when he was at the small school level. And just the way he plays, his style of play, he's a playmaker. He's a point guard as a quarterback. And you can succeed at that in the NFL these days. So I love what he does. He's got the adequate arm strength. He needs to work on the anticipation and the ball placement a little bit. But who doesn't at this level? I mean, you're talking about Paxton Lynch. You're talking about Carson Wentz. Those guys have to work on these things too. So I am a believer, and that's my cat. Let me get him out of here. This is the craziest one. Say hi. There you go.
We've had
this is the weirdest interview I've ever done, Andy.
That's fine, and I'm proud. I'm actually proud to be a part of it. What is his name? Because we've had Charlie Harmon on this show as well.
That was
Charlie Harmon. What was that?
That was Pearl.
Pearl. Okay. So we've had
Black Pearl.
Pearl Risdon and Charlie Harmon have graced the Hanging Einstein set. But you were mentioning Lynch, and Lynch is your number 1 guy, which I was allowing myself to be teased this week when a few people were mocking Lynch going 20 to the Jets. I'm a big Jet fan. And I was sitting there going, I can't see it happening, but maybe, possibly. I was allowing myself to fall into the idea of that happening. And then once this trade happened, as you mentioned, I don't think there's any way, shape, or form that Lynch makes it out of the top 10.
No.
So it's.
Hope you like Connor Cook, man.
What's that?
I hope you like Connor Cook.
I don't want Connor Cook at all. I don't like Connor Cook. My dark horse was always Brandon Doty, and he's not really enamored anybody.
He's a middle round guy. I actually like him. I was on a podcast yesterday. I talked him up a little bit. People talk about, what Jared Goff does well. To me, they're very similar quarterbacks, except Doty is like 3 years older and has some injury history. But if you watch them play the position, they're very similar. And that's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily get all the love for Goff. I think Goff he's got some potential, but there's a lot of things there that just hold me back from falling even in like with him.
Right.
So maybe, and this is my dark horse, and I put it out in a piece today on Real GM, shameless plug. I think Cardale Jones is going in the first round. I think an NFL team is going to love him with his size, with what he did against Alabama and those defenses. My God.
And I think he absolutely should. I mean, and this isn't, this is purely a size and skill comparison, but he could be Cam Newton. He
could be.
That's the kind of guy we're talking about. He could also be Jamarcus Russell.
Yes, he could.
So the range is very broad, but that's why you're taking him, and you don't get an opportunity to get a lot of those guys often. I was going to bring up Chad Pennington, who was a first round guy, and nobody ever really loved Chad Pennington, but he had a pretty good career, and I kind of see a little of that with Goff, and even with Doty, as you're making the comparison, is very good, accurate guys. Not the strongest arm. Doty's arm is, I think both their arms are adequate and stronger than Pennington's, but you're talking about precision guys. And I know there's been arguments about, how accurate and precise Goff is, but I think those are more just people who don't like Goff, you yourself being one.
I think that's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But do you think now LA, this is all speculation, of course. Do you think LA has moved up? And it's weird saying LA, but do you think LA has moved up to take Goff, or do you think it's to take Wentz? Because I tweeted, no FCS quarterback has ever gone first overall, but no FCS quarterback drafted in the first round has ever been unsuccessful. So if he goes number one, we're in some, crazy experiment that could go insane. I mean,
it's nuts, man. Like I tweeted out when I was at the Shrine game. I went out to dinner with a scout the first night I was there, and he told me, we were talking about just general draft stuff, and he brought up Carson Wentz because we were talking about where we're going to see at the Senior Bowl. And he's like, what? If he has a good week next week, he's going to be a top 5 pick. So I tweeted that out, and everybody was like, "You are so full of crap."
Yeah.
Puff and pass, dude, and it's happening. So it's fun for me to see the NFL, and that's one of the things that I like is that the NFL guys are so far ahead of the game on this, and that's why talking to the scouts during the season is invaluable, because you learn things like that.
Yeah.
Most of the even the big media, they didn't catch on to Carson Wentz until the Senior Bowl or even right after it. This guy. Now Mike Mayock's, throwing platitudes at him all the time. It's fun to be first, even though I rail against the firsters crowd. It's crazy that he's going to go that high. It really is, because I like what I've seen of him, but there's such a limited scope, and he's coming from the FCS. He started 20 games. He threw 600 passes.
Yeah.
If you tell that to a general manager, they're going to be like, okay, yeah, maybe we'll spend a 4th round pick on him. But the hype that goes along with it, and again, the QB thirst it's so real.
Yeah.
I
think for Winston, as we saw firsthand, it was more just the confidence that he didn't seem fazed by the bright lights or being in the spotlight, and you can't teach his size. If he can make the throws, he's making the throws. So it really comes down to, what's between the ears. And so far, he's showing that he's not been rattled by anything. So it's frightening to say because, we look at it, the stamp and the label of an FCS guy or whatever, and he shouldn't be. But why not? Going back to basketball, there was I'm not even going to remember the school now. Stephen F. Austin. They had their senior leader or whatever, and I saw people tweeting like, "Oh, how come this guy didn't get any, top program offers coming out of high school, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He should be a lottery pick, all this stuff." I'm thinking, this is not the same player now that was coming out of high school,
Exactly.
So, Wentz went with what he had available to him, and he developed and grew into his body. And you're not going to leave, a school, after 2 or 3 years. Maybe you do but why not be a trendsetter? Why not, be the first FCS guy to go 1 or 2? Like, I mean, I think there's more. I think there's more value on your legacy as what he's done than having transferred to Florida. Say, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that angle, and that's something that I think doesn't get played up enough. I'll go back to my Ohio University. We were a wretched football team when I was there. We had the nation's longest losing streak twice. And we were better now. And one of the reasons we were better was because Frank Solich came in from Nebraska. And one of the things that he sold was you can be part of the birth of a great program here. And he marketed that very hard. And through player development, which they're very good at, they'll get a 1 or a 2-star kid. And by the time he comes, at the end of his career, he's a 3-star guy. And every now and then you get like a TJ Carey, who winds up, starting for the Raiders as a cornerback, or Mike Mitchell, starting for the Steelers as a safety. There's a real appeal for that, and the NFL loves players that are sucked in by that, because it shows that they're not necessarily a front runner. They're willing to work. They're willing to be part of something that is a little bit different. They're not just trying to. Not everybody can go to Alabama, and embracing the fact that you can do something special at a place that hasn't had special before. That's a great appeal for a team like the Rams, where they have some pretty darn interesting pieces on that team. They got a lot of holes too, but if you can be the quarterback that leads them, or like Marcus Mariota with the Titans, they haven't had a lot of success there at quarterback since Steve McNair was there. Well, now he's got a chance to rewrite that and be part of something, the rebirth of something special. I know the Browns are selling that to everybody that they talk to, but that's real. I favor that. So I like the kind of kids like that. That's, maybe it's because I went to a MAC school, but I love, scouting the MAC and Conference USA and the American and the Sun Belt, because those are different kind of kids. And you have a lot less questions about their work ethic for the most part. Come from that level, and their ability to learn and process and try to get better. As far as in terms of like a 5-star guy who got wined and dined by every SEC and Big Ten school, they probably got by on natural ability more than anything else. And have they developed that? So you have to take that prism when you're scouting these guys too. Right.
Was Miami of Ohio in your conference?
Yes, they're our big rival, Muck Miami.
So you got to see Big Ben?
He was a little after my time, but yeah, I did see him. Unfortunately, fortunately for him, he's become very good. His sister was actually a prized volleyball player, so I actually knew of her before I knew of him.
Wow,
which is weird enough. Yeah.
Okay. Well, going back to this quarterback thing, you mentioned Mariota, and Tennessee has some line issues that they could bolster. We know the Rams tried to address those over the last couple of years, but it doesn't seem to have made a huge impact. How much does a Gurley help a rookie quarterback? Because again, we're assuming that they moved up to take one of these top 3 quarterbacks. I don't think it's Lynch, but if it were you as the GM, it would be Lynch. But yes. We're not going to rule it. We're not going to rule it out entirely. But it seems as though there's going to be a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
With Gurley, and what should be a better line than what they've played to. How much can Gurley help a rookie quarterback?
Oh, tremendously. If you don't have to win by throwing the ball 50 times a game, that's great. I went through this with Matthew Stafford as the number 1 overall pick. They didn't have a running game, and he had to throw all the time. He set the NFL record for attempts twice. I think it's 727 throws in a year. That's just astronomical.
Right.
You're not going to win that way as a rookie quarterback, especially not with St. Louis's line, which is basically 5 right tackles playing 5 positions across the line. It's the most bizarre thing they've ever done, and it didn't work. So now, the big thing is with their trade, they're not going to be able to rebuild around that because they gave away all their other precious resources.
Yeah.
So you've got to lean on Gurley and lean on that offensive line and their run blocking prowess, because that's what they're good at. Put Greg Robinson where he's clearing holes for Todd Gurley. That's your path to success. And set up play action. Set up a little bit of bootlegs, things like that, based off the run game. Having a guy like that is comfortable taking the ball 20 to 25 times a game and getting you first downs and setting you up at 2nd and 4 and 3rd and 1, favorable situations, instead of, you incomplete a pass on first down, you try to draw a play on 2nd down and get 2 yards, and then you're at 3rd and 8, and everybody knows you're throwing, and you're a rookie quarterback, and they're mixing the coverages up, and they're doing a zone fire blitz on you, and your head's spinning. With Gurley, if the game plan goes as expected, and with Jeff Fisher, he did this before with Eddie George and Steve McNair, so he has some experience in doing this. That's why I'm pretty confident that they will stick to that game plan. I think it will definitely help them out.
Okay. And you mentioned a strong running game helping a rookie quarterback with Stafford. Well, that same draft, my Jets got Sanchez, and he looked great his first 2 years because the Jets had a strong run game. Then all of a sudden he wasn't good enough anymore, and I think his career has never recovered from that. But
he's currently the starting quarterback for the reigning Super Bowl champs. He's got that going for him.
But he didn't even get the head coach's endorsement on it. It was something to the effect of, "Yeah, we have Sanchez, but we have other options as well." Something to that effect.
That's why he's the head coach of a Super Bowl champ.
Right. Well, exactly. But I mean, if I just signed there, I would hope I would get at least that's our starter today. We'll see what tomorrow brings. But he didn't even get that. Wouldn't it be great if the Rams took Tunsil?
That would blow my mind. That would be just, Obviously they're not going to, but or take Miles Jack and throw everybody off.
Yeah, right.
Something totally out of the box like that would be
Elliott.
Fantastic.
Or Elliott. What if they
Elliott
take Elliott?
That would be something else.
Right. I mean, your trade potential I would imagine would be pretty high.
Get back some of those picks you just gave up.
Yeah. So if you're the GM of the Rams, you're sitting on one now. You just moved to LA. You have a quarterback that you don't like, which is kind of weird because Foles has been like everybody's favorite one week.
He's not terrible.
Right. He had a couple of weeks where people loved him, and but you got a quarterback that obviously people don't think you should have, and you got Gurley. You just moved. Where are you going? You pick is yours.
Yeah, you know what? I'm taking Carson Wentz because I think first off, I don't think you're expecting to win right away, even though the logic says that you're making this. It's a dramatic move. You've got a coach that's been there for a long time and hasn't won. You've got a general manager in the same situation. But I think Wentz has a much higher ceiling than Jared Goff. So I'm going with the highest ceiling. If I'm going all in, I'm going all in with my guy. Okay. I'm taking Wentz there. And hoping it works. Maybe Case Keenum starts the first 3 or 4 games. I think they're going to trade Foles. In fact, Foles might be traded by the time we get done with this, from what I understand.
Okay.
So, you ride with Case Keenum until Wentz is ready. Hopefully that's, no later than October. And then you see what you got.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I didn't intend to get on quarterbacks, but I'm glad we did. I'm going to ask you about one more guy before we get off of this and kind of go a little bit more personal again and wrap up.
Cool.
Brandon Allen is an enigma to me because I personally was not blown away by him. I didn't like his hand size. I recorded it to try to explain what I was seeing, and even the recording didn't quite capture, just this release he has, like a little flick. and you could clearly see that he doesn't trust his arm, which is why he relies on his legs so much. Yet he is the darling of a lot of people and a sleeper at quarterback for a lot of people. I've said I think he would fit perfectly with what Chip Kelly tries to run. So if San Fran didn't go QB at 7 and they wanted to fall back a little later, he's an athletic, mobile quarterback that could fit that system and is could be a project. But I want to mention him specifically because I'm curious your take on him.
You know what? I'm kind of with you on that. He's a little bit enigmatic to me. I didn't think much of him until his senior year, and then he did a lot of better things. He became a more poised guy. He started to make better decisions with the ball. Got a little more patient and was a little bit, I think his processing speed sped up, and it needed to. But then again, at the Senior Bowl, I wasn't wowed by him. He looked – I liked Jeff Driscoll better, and I rate Jeff Driscoll higher. Which is crazy to me because I watched him at Florida and he was god awful. But you saw it start to click once you got to Louisiana Tech, and again, it sort of clicked with Allen too. But I'm going to go with the higher potential with Driscoll there. But yeah, Allen, he's a middle round, 4th, 5th round guy that's going to get a shot, and at worst he's a developmental backup. Right. And if you get into that range and if you hit, and he winds up being even Case Keenum. If that's his career arc, that's not a bad investment. But yeah, right. I don't feel strongly conviction one way or the other on Brandon Allen. He's one of those guys that's sort of like I could see it working and I could see him going away in 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I was just curious because I know you give an honest opinion and not just what everybody else is going to say. As with Vernon Adams and Paxton Lynch being your first, so I was curious about Brandon Allen. And you know what? One thing I wanted to say earlier that I forgot to even mention was, it's obvious that you're talking about the scouts and the scout being the first on Wentz. One thing is clear: the NFL is not going to let fantasy or scouts or analysts dictate what they do. They're going to put the guys in, no matter how much we clamor for or against, a certain player. And again, whether that's from a fantasy angle, you want your guy starting or getting more targets, whatever the case is, or an analyst that has nothing to do with fantasy but thinks this guy has to be the second overall, whatever the case is, they're going to do what they want to do. And we all react to what they do. So,
yeah,
they are first. They're putting the player in because they're seeing stuff that we're not necessarily seeing or we're not privy to know what the discussions are. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, there's going to be guys that fall on draft weekend and we're like, why is that guy still on the board? And then it comes out, 6 months later, well, okay, he's an idiot, or he's got a stupid brother that's a spice head that's dragging him down, just associating with bad people, or he got a 4 on his Wonderlic and that was probably better than expected. That happens a lot, and we never hear about it until like later on. So that. The discovery process on that is always a lot of fun.
It is. I agree with that. And it's like TMZ-ish, but it is fun. Mention favorite movies. So I've asked people in the past what, it never clicked to me until just like I said, watching Friday Night Lights again. But I've asked people their favorite songs, their favorite movies, just across the board. But let me be more specific. Favorite football movie.
Favorite football movie. I'm going to go Point Break. Probably doesn't count, even though Johnny Utah was the Ohio State quarterback. Point Break is my all-time favorite movie. So that gets the nod, but it's not technically a football movie. So I would probably go with The Program, just because it came out when I was in college, and I worked at Cedar Point, which is an amusement park in Ohio, and my roommate there was a middle linebacker, and he empathized so much with the dude who was in it. He was crying at the end of the movie when the dude broke his leg. So that's always made a lasting impact for me. So I've always liked that movie.
Okay. That was on recently. I watched it again, and I watched that probably 100 times when it came out, so I'm with you on that. And I always thought it was kind of like a little over the top,
it's very cheesy.
Yeah, kind of cheesy feel to it. But when I rewatched it again now as a 40-year-old, a week ago, it felt a lot more realistic than it did 20 years ago, when I watched it. It felt a lot less cheesy at this stage of my life than it did back then. So
absolutely. I totally get that. Your perspective changes on things. I think seeing kids like I talked a little bit about, being in the inner city. I saw kids where like their whole life is trying to get away from that situation, and their outlet is football or basketball. Right. And I have a better understanding for the disappointment level when that doesn't happen. It resonates. It's totally different now than it was when I was 20 years old and watching it, loaded up on tequila with a Michigan State's middle linebacker sitting next to me.
Right. I think the difference was the actors felt a little more theatrical, but the issues and the points were like really right on point. And like I specifically like seeing when one of the players was sleeping with James Conner, was the head coach's daughter, and he had to kick him off the team, and you could see he wanted to kick his ass, but the next day he's got to defend him to the media, and just the dynamic, and it comes across, like I said, very kind of theatrical, and that's kind of where the cheesiness comes. But the actual, point they're trying to make, and the actual scenario and situation was very real. You could kind of, feel it, especially with everything, that happens now. We're talking about Wonderlic tests and, all the drama that comes out after the fact, why, players don't get drafted, things like that.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So the program, huh? All right.
Yeah.
I could get on board. I'm glad you didn't say like Rudy, because that's
no.
Win everything.
No.
Don't get me wrong. I love Rudy. But we need a little diversity.
Yeah. Now see, I was brought up in an Ohio State family, and my dad, even as much as he hates Michigan, he hated Notre Dame. He rooted for Michigan when they played Notre Dame. So I've always been like brought up that Notre Dame is like the evil empire. Okay. So, I never got into Rudy. Plus, it's a work of fiction, and it just wasn't my thing.
Okay. Gotcha. So, I'm gonna follow up with a couple personal things, but back to the topics. And do you have a biggest hit? Anybody you've been biggest hit on? Like somebody you thought like, this was my guy. And you know what? Let's say biggest hit or biggest miss.
I've had, not to toot my own horn, I've had a lot of good hits over the years. Just last year, I was really high on Tyler Lockett. Yes. I had a first-round grade on him, and he wound up panning out. And heck yeah, man.
Well, I'll tell you that the whole reason I was high on Tyler Lockett was because of being at the Senior Bowl, and everything behind me, all the murmurs I heard from all the scouts and coaches was, wow, Tyler Lockett's the best player here. Tyler Lockett can play. Tyler Lockett, he's a football player. And that was all I'm thinking, okay, drafted him, and there you go. The rest
I was really, really high on Joe Thomas. He's the highest graded player I've ever scouted, even more than any like Andrew Luck or any guy like that. And I'm very happy that he hit, because there was some people that doubted him. I was big on J.J. Watt. I didn't think he'd become J.J. freaking Watt, but I saw a lot of really high things, a very high ceiling for him.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of some like more obscure guys that I've loved. I'm like blanking on. I was big on Matt Forte. He was my number one running back that year. So I like the guys that are off the beaten path sort of thing. Misses, the one that always stands out to me, and I published this. I had Chandler Jones. I said that drafting Chandler Jones, you might as well just set a bag of dog poop on fire, because that's a return you're going to get from it. Obviously, I was wrong. He's become pretty darn good. Most of the guys that I've missed on are like guys that I overestimated their lack of athleticism. Mm-hmm. I thought that they couldn't. Or I thought they would be much better because they were really good football players and they weren't necessarily good athletes. And one of the things that I've learned is that you do have to have the requisite athleticism. There's a guy this year, Scooby Wright, where most casual fans are like, how can you not love this guy? I mean, he made every tackle for Arizona, and he was everywhere. Well, if you look at what he did in the college game, it doesn't translate to the pros because, he's smart and he's instinctive, but he's not all that instinctive. He's not that quick. He's not that strong. He's not that fast. I just don't see it working in the NFL. So I used to be higher on those kind of guys than I am now. It's one of the learning process things. Okay.
Well, I had a miss on Chandler Jones as well, but it was the Chandler Jones wide receiver out of San Jose State.
Wow.
Actually became, kind of friendly with them. We've had several conversations back and forth. But I just thought this was, I thought he was too productive, too athletic. His father was a former NFL player. I just thought it good story, and he hasn't been able to latch on with a team, although he's had several opportunities. I think he's in the CFL now. I don't know that the story is done with him, but so far.
Yeah. You know what? You bring up San Jose State. That brings up, I was a huge Koye Francis fan back in the day, back in his draft class. He was, I think he was my 4th or 5th rated corner that year. He didn't even make it out of training camp. So, yeah, I have some misses there, too.
All right. Well, yeah. And so now Phil Irvin's in that kind of category right now. Well, we'll save that topic for another day. I got to get – well, you just mentioned many good reasons why everybody should be following you. On Twitter, your information is right here. And if anybody has any specific questions for you, ask them on Twitter. Leave them in the comments section if you're not on Twitter.
Please do.
Yeah, I'll make sure Jeff answers them. I got to also ask you, is there something you can give away as a prize to the members of this audience?
I saw that you've been doing this with some of the other guys, and I don't have a draft guide. I put everything out there for free. That's probably why I'm a sponge for my wife. I'm thinking I'm going to the draft, so I'll get like a draft hat that I can give away to somebody. You'll have to wait till after that, but I'll get like some official NFL draft swag, either like a long sleeve T-shirt or a hat or something that I can give away. All
right, that would be awesome. All right, we'll look forward to that, and we'll raffle that off somehow. We'll come up with something clever for that. You know what? Maybe we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Well, you said this was one of the craziest interviews you've ever been a part of. I don't think it was that bad at all, actually. I mean,
well, the interview part is good. It's just all the superfluous crap that's going on behind the scenes with my tapped out computer and my cat and my lighting issues. It's I totally apologize. Normally, I actually have like a fairly good thing to do this, but it all just went out the hell today, man.
Well, hopefully, people are getting something of value from the words, not the images. So. But I want to thank you for making the time and coming on. Please tell everybody again how they can find you and where your work is posted.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Jeff Risdon, Risdon, capitalize the first letters of both names. I'm at Real GM. I just put up 32 fearless predictions for the NFL draft today. It's sort of, I got sick of doing mock drafts, so I decided to do something a little different. It's a lot of fun. If you're not familiar with my writing, I tend to be a little bit more light and different. I compared Laquan Treadwell to Chipotle this year. I compared Miles Jack to a failed politician. So my angle is a little bit different than most people. I try to not take it so seriously and try to make it a little bit more of a fun read. And that's what that is. I'm at Draft Breakdown. You can find my articles. Scroll down the page wherever it is. I have another one coming up next week on Kansas State cornerback Danzel McDaniel, who's a guy that I've been championing for a long time as a real draft sleeper this year. So check that out when it comes out. If you're a Lions fan or an NFC North fan, I do all kinds of stuff at Sideline Report. I do have a radio show. I'm on ESPN 96.1 in Grand Rapids. I am their official football guy. I'm in studio at least once a week. You'll have to check on Twitter when that is or their Facebook feed, but you can stream that on iHeart. And we have a lot of fun with that. The hosts that are in there, Jim and Drew, do a fantastic job of pushing my buttons and getting me to talk. I'm a big basketball fan as well. Go Cavs! This is your year. Do it. So talk basketball on that too. So yeah, there's a lot of places to find me. As I say a lot, I wear a whole lot of hats. If anybody wants to condense my hats into one better hat, I'm always listening for that too.
All right. Well, that's if you're not sold, if you're not following Jeff already and you're not sold now, you never will be, because you should definitely be following him. Great work, great stuff, and great talk today. I appreciate you.
Thanks,
Dude, I thank you. I appreciate you jumping on with me and making the time. And like I said, I hope everybody enjoyed it. Singleton, people spent on Twitter. I want to thank Draft Breakdown again for helping support this series. Draft's coming up. We're getting closer and closer. We're going to see how these things pan out. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.